There's a storm across the valley. The clouds are rolling in. The afternoon is heavy on your shoulders. There's a truck out on the 4-lane, a mile or more away. The whining of his wheels just makes it colder.
Welcome to Community Forum. Today is November 13th, Monday, not a Friday, and my name is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your host, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome our guest today, Mark Resnick. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you for having me. So excited.
You're welcome. And Mark was a major, writing major in college, and he's finally getting to do what he loves to do, loves to write. And we're going to talk about these two books that he is a principal in. One he wrote entirely himself called 10 Days with Dad, and you can imagine what that is. And they're about caregiving, but he has other plans too, and we'll hear about that. So welcome, Mark. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you were raised, and how you got excited about writing.
Yeah, writing, you know, it's funny because I grew up with my dad and my two brothers. My mom moved out of the house when I was very young. I was 7. And, you know, my dad was amazing. He, you know, raising 3 boys was brutal. And back in 1980, that wasn't very common for the mom to move out of the house.
Right.
So as good of a job as he did, there wasn't a lot of, you know, extra emotion and empathy going around in the house with the guys. So I did a lot of journaling, to be honest with you. I didn't really have people that I could turn to when I had things to talk about or think about. So I did a lot of journaling. And then that continued when I went to high school. I went to Zavarian Brothers High School in Westwood, and I wrote for the magazine there. I was editor of the newspaper. I just really enjoyed writing. It was just something that opened up the creativity of it, you know, it just really sparked my imagination. And so I just kind of kept doing that throughout my life. But I definitely wanted to write a book. I just never, I kind of put it on the back burner, you know. Mm-hmm. And then COVID hit, and then my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and serendipity, it just kind of happened. I went back to journaling. And the more I journaled, I said, I think there's a story here, you know, more than just me venting about my dad's diagnosis and his disease and his sickness. And then it became sort of, you know, motivation. It kind of helped me grieve and process, but at the same time, it helped me, you know, share what I was going through as a kid and all the lessons my dad taught me, and just kind of maybe help people when they're going through their struggles, whether it's caregiving, whether it was a terminal illness, whether it was addiction or anything else that they were going through in their lives. I just thought there was a bigger story here, just my own.
And when did you write that?
I wrote that during COVID and finished it in 2022. And it took about 10 months to write, and probably another 10 months to edit and finalize and get it all together and look good and things like that. So yeah, it's been a great last couple of years. I've been very busy the last couple of years. I did not expect to write a second book so soon after the first one, but you know, opportunity called, and my co-authors just, I'm so blessed to be part of this new project.
Yeah, now you have a day job too.
I do.
To support yourself. And we talked a little bit earlier about how you would like to have, make that, just switch that. In other words, be a full-time writer and a part-time salesman. All right. So, so you're on your way in a sense. Tell us a little bit how you met these co-authors and what the book, The Greatest Burden, The Greatest Blessing. Tell us a little bit also what that's
absolutely. About. Well, 10 Days with Dad is my story. Really, it's about my dad's Alzheimer's, but it's really my story and what, again, sort of the lessons I learned from my dad. And really, at the end of the day, it was somebody gets a terminal illness and you're like, your life changes. It just does. It just it can't not change. And for me, it was I want to change, and I did change. You know, I started to eat healthier and become a I took some coaching and I started writing again. And it really, my life is, despite the darkness of my dad's disease, my life was actually improving and getting better. I was improving myself. And I wanted other people to have that same kind of a message of, hey, it's never too late or early to start your passion, to pursue your passion, to follow your dreams. Don't wait for a terminal illness to change your life, whether it's to lose weight, to get a new job, a new relationship. Like, we don't have to wait for tragedy to strike in order to start over or to So that was my story. But at the end of the day, it really was, the impetus was caregiving. And when these two gentlemen, both of them have been taking care of their spouses who have had terminal cancer. Those two gentlemen met at Mass General Brigham in the waiting room, and they just became really good friends. And they didn't have a lot of support either in the caregiving process. It's such a grind. It's such a burden. And the two of them thought one day they would love to, to talk more about to aim the spotlight onto caregivers, because they're like the invisible patient. You've got the patient who has cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and then the invisible patient is the caregiver, the one who's doing the work behind the scenes that if they don't take care of themselves, they're going to get sick too. So the two of them, I've known Alan Rubel for 20 years, and he loved my book, and he said, hey, would you mind helping Mike and I get our book off the ground? Mike Tenaglia?
Tenaglia.
And I said, sure. I mean, I want to help people share their stories. I'm an open book, and I want to help people write their story. Well, after 2 meetings, they said, Mark, we need you on this project. You have too much expertise. Like, no, I'm not patting myself in the back, but they were like, they're both in their 70s, and they said, we'd love to have you be part of this project. And I couldn't say no. It was only 6 months after my first book. But I was like, this is such a great opportunity to let other caregivers share their story. And that's how it came about. And again, we contacted friends and family members who had caregiving experiences, either past or current. And some of them wrote their stories, and for about 15 of them, I wrote their stories with them because they just weren't comfortable writing. It was great. It was so great.
Wonderful. And so how many stories do you have in this book?
I believe there's 44 stories. And again, from addiction, PTSD, mental health, cancer, aneurysm, spinal cord injury. We cover it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a message here for caregivers, but also for the rest of us who aren't. Because obviously there's going to come a time when either we're going to be the patient or we're going to be the caregiver. So so it's worthwhile, and I'm sure there's a light into the whole issue that shines brightly, right? I mean,
I mean, honestly, I speak about 10 Days with Dad to audience, a lot of council of agings and just libraries, and the one thing I kept saying over and over again, it was taking care of my dad was the greatest burden, the greatest blessing of my life. It truly was. It was such a burden in so many ways, but I got to know my dad better than any point in my life. I mean, we just became very, very close. It was such a blessing.
Was he more expressive too? Because you mentioned earlier, as a lot of men are, they're not very vocal, vociferous. They're not. They keep their emotions inside. Was this a time when your dad had the opportunity to really express his love for you?
It's a good question. It's an interesting question because my dad was it was a 7-year Alzheimer's journey. In the first several years of it, you're pretty, I want to say, normal, right? You know there's something wrong with you, but you can still communicate. And we could see a subtle change in his sort of demeanor and just, I don't know if he, honestly, I don't know if he actually thought, geez, I only have a few years left. I need to, be more present. But I think subconsciously there was that. Yeah, he was able to say I love you more, and and just kind of appreciate the time we had together. Yeah, when he was sick, we spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of 600 cups of coffee and a couple hundred meals together at his assisted living facility. So I just learned so much about him that I never knew. I don't know if he could say the same because it's not that he wasn't all there, but I don't know with Alzheimer's if they're not really taking new memories into the vault. It's so they're absorbing the information, but they're not really retaining it at that point. So I can't say that he was learning a lot about me, but I was learning a ton about him. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so it was a burden, but it was a blessing, big time.
For me, it was a huge blessing. Yeah, I mean, and also, I have 2 brothers, and for me, I was like, I'm not wasting this opportunity. I'm not going to have regret 5 years down the road and be like, oh man, I wish I had more time with my dad. So, yeah, it was great. It was such a wonderful time.
Yeah. Did your brothers also get a chance to have this experience too?
Yeah, they had the chance. I think we all deal with it differently. I think for one of my brothers, it was very hard for him to be around my dad. It was just too emotional. And my younger brother, he started his family later in life, so it was just in a different point in his life where I just had the flexibility and the freedom to get there every single day, and I don't know if they had that same.
So did they all live in Massachusetts?
Yeah, one's in the South Shore in Duxbury, one's in Milton, and my dad was mostly in Sharon.
I see.
And then he moved to Plymouth and
that was where the facility was.
The first one was in Sharon, and then his nursing home ended up being in Plymouth, which was a little bit closer to John, so that worked out well for my younger brother. Yeah.
Great. So tell us about your plans for the future now. You're on a podcast here at ECAT with Joshua Peach, and tell us a little bit about that. What's all that about?
Yeah, Josh is a long time. He was born in Easton, so he's a lifer like you, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of them here.
We call them townies.
Townies, yes. Josh is a townie. Josh is a fascinating man. He's got a great life story, and he's got a podcast called Be Awesome, BEAUSM, sort of like on the periodic elements, and it's his whole concept is these are the essential elements to a really good life. Is being awesome. If you could be anything, be awesome. And he just goes around spreading the messages of the people in our lives are they're special, and he finds people who I think you have a show sort of like this show. You want to bring out highlight or recognize people who are doing great things, and that's what he does. But his people, a lot of them they're just everyday people like you and I. They're just could be custodians, they could be caregivers, they could be businessmen, but basically they have awesome stories, and he tries to share them with the world.
Tell me, is it by Zoom or by in person?
We are live in the studio, and our guests are usually live as well.
Oh, good.
Sometimes we'll do a Zoom one, but so Josh is my next project. Actually, I'm co-authoring a book with him, and we're taking. He's always wanted to get. So he does speeches across the country, and at the end of the speech, you get 45 minutes with somebody, but sometimes you want a little bit more, right? And so he's been wanting to write this book for like 5 years.
Is he a motivational speaker?
He is. He's a motivational speaker, and so we're going to do it. We're going to write this book, and we're going to publish it next year, 2024.
What's it going to be about?
It's his story. It's his life story, and how, Josh talks about being awesome and how to be not how to be awesome, just be awesome. If you could be anything, be awesome. But he'll be the first to admit that he's not always awesome too. And we all have demons in our lives that need to be talked about. So we're going to share his story from childhood through now, and we're going to highlight a lot of how he's awesome and all the people who are awesome in his life. So it's going to be an inspirational book that's going to kind of pick up where the speeches leave off, and so you can dive a little bit deeper into what that means, how we can make other people smile and laugh and be happy.
And also how to appreciate and take advantage of the relationships you have in terms of time, because time is the one thing that disappears. And if we don't take advantage of being with our loved ones and doing things together, reminiscing, I can't ever pronounce that word, and sharing the memories.
Yeah.
What do we have? We've lost something very, very special.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the blessings that I got out of my experience as a caregiver, is that it really changed my perspectives. And what I mentioned earlier about, not waiting for tragedy to pursue your passions. And for me, that's what writing is for me. It's always been a passion. And now I have two choices. I can continue writing, or I can kind of let it slide. And I just want to continue it. And I want other people to pursue their passions. It's such a great blessing.
Mm-hmm.
We only have so much time in this earth, and now my whole life is centered around, well, here's what I'm going to do when I retire. Now that's silly. Like, I'm not going to wait till I retire to start writing or continue writing. And we talked earlier offset about screenplays, and I want to write screenplays, and I want to write fiction books and nonfiction books.
Great. And so you've already written a screenplay.
I have. Yes. It's a romantic comedy. It's called Five Kisses, and it's a lot of things we write about in life are sort of based on reality, and just experiences that we've had in life. So yeah, it's an interesting. Writing a screenplay is so fun because it's not like writing a book where you can just let it roll. You have to have. I think your son's in the business.
Yes.
And there's rules. The script is only 100 to 130 pages. So you really have to use your words carefully. You can't just ramble on verbal diarrhea. You have to really construct it in a tight manner. And it was such a challenge. I did it during COVID just to kind of break up the writing of the book and just dealing with COVID, and I love it.
So screenplays are something that you're really interested in, Mark, but you're also interested in writing nonfiction. Would that be short stories, or would it be a novel?
So I have a few nonfiction ideas that I still want to finish, the Josh book, and I also want to write a story about ADHD, which is something I've kind of experienced my whole life. But fiction books, I'm really kind of itching to get into the fiction. I have a sort of a political reality book that I would like to write about a sort of a unknown entity who wants to take on a long-time incumbent and just kind of dive right into that. I would love to do fiction work. Yeah. Honestly, it's just, I'm not one of those people who wakes up in the middle of the night with an idea and just jots it down. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'll go to bed and I'll get that thought in the morning. But I do a lot of driving, so I have a lot of ideas stored up in the head, ready to get them out onto paper.
So you have to pull over, and you have your little journal next to you, and you've got to write those ideas.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
That's what it needs
So when you
to
get to be my age, you've got to do that because it can vanish in a matter of seconds.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily your age or mine. I think it happens to all of us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely.
So have you approached any publishers? Or have you sent your screenplay to Hollywood, or?
Yeah, so it's I mean, you're a writer, so you know this, but finding an agent is very tough. I tried to find an agent with 10 Days with Dad, and we also tried to find one who's great. It's one of those things where the agent doesn't want to work with an unknown unless it's an amazing script or a book. But how do you get it to the agent? It's so hard. Like they get so many manuscripts and submissions that it's hard to get their attention. So yes, I would love to. I did a couple of award entries for the screenplay Five Kisses, and I didn't win the awards, but they give you great feedback. Here's some things you need to work on. This part works really well. Tighten this part up. That was super helpful. So I do have a friend who's a producer and a director out in Hollywood, but it's hard to get his attention. So I really need to tweak my script before I send it to the boss.
Yeah, more tweeting.
Yeah. More tweaking for sure. Yeah.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. Do you have any parting words, especially for budding writers out there? Budding writers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this whole writing journey has been an amazing journey because I've met so many people like myself who want to write. I mean, my wife doesn't believe me, but there's a statistic out there that says something like 82% of the people want to write a book.
Really?
And she's like, that's not possible. I'm like, Google it. And there is a stat. So a lot of people have a story that they want to write, and I'm an open book. I want to help anybody write their story. And my advice to people is you just have to start small. Write 10 minutes, write 5 minutes a day. Write one paragraph a day. But every writer, I think most writers will say it's you got to build the writing muscle. And you just have to, like anything else, if you want to lose weight, you have to go to the gym a certain amount of times each week. And so writing is no different. You have to build the muscle. And yeah, I tell people to write 10 minutes a day as often as they can. And that'll just get the juices flowing. When I was finishing 10 Days with Dad, you know, it started as a journal entry, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's a story here. But there was a part of me that, as I was finishing the book, I was thinking to myself, how did this even, like, it was so surreal. Like, it kind of just happens, right? The juices just start flowing and things starting to come together, and you're like, how did I do that? And sometimes the editor points you in the right direction. But in this case, it was more like, the editor was more like, this is what needs to be shortened and taken out. But yeah, writing's an amazing, it's an amazing feeling when you're done. Because it's hard work.
Right, and I understand you're willing to be the ghostwriter for people who have stories that you feel are important to tell and share.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ghostwrite. I mean, it's just you want to get your story out into the world because it's a good story. And I definitely encourage people to look at that avenue. Unfortunately, I have too many requests to ghostwrite. And I'm sort of torn between, yeah, I want to tell your story, but I also want to keep writing my own stories.
Sure.
So but there are plenty of people who can help you get your story onto paper. If I can't do it myself, yeah, for sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you have a bright future, and you're living your dream, and you're going to continue to do that. And I have no doubt that you're going to be very successful, Mark.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
It certainly has. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, audience, for being present today and experiencing this very interesting man and topic. And please get a copy of the book, 10 Days with Dad, and also The Greatest Burden, The Greatest Blessing. I assume they can be purchased on Amazon?
That's correct.
Okay, like everything else, Amazon is the key. Thank you for joining us. This is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, bidding you adieu, arrivederci, a bientôt, hey hey, that's Swedish for goodbye. Until next time, be well.